All righty, we're recording. Hello, everybody. Tonight we're meeting with Tony-Tasset. And I noticed he signed in as Anthony. I guess he's incognito tonight. So where did you grow up, Tony?
Cincinnati, Ohio.
Is that a southern city or a northern city?
Right on the border, you know. I think it's officially the north, but as soon as you cross the river, it's south.
I know, but I always feel like those border cities are more southern than the southern cities.
Well, Mark Twain said about Cincinnati that if the world comes to an end, move to Cincinnati because it'll happen 10 years later.
That's cruel. All right, so you went to high school in Cincinnati.
Went to high school in Cincinnati, went to undergraduate school at the Art Academy of Cincinnati, and then I moved to Chicago to go to graduate school in 84.
Were you interested in art when you were in high school? You must have been by the time you got out. When did you decide that you were in the grasp of the art gods?
I always thought I was going to be an artist. Well, I was one of those. I think a lot of kids draw when they were little, and I just didn't stop. And I don't know. It was really. I took classes. Outside of school, I took drawing classes. You probably remember, Paul, those. Remember those matchbooks that had Draw Blinky on them?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I saw them in the back of Popular Mechanics all the time.
Yeah. It was a correspondence course. I took that course. I think I thought I was going to be more of a commercial artist, but I was always interested. I don't know. Those nuns back in school, they always drummed into you that everybody had one little talent. And I think early on, my mother, whatever, pegged me as being an artist, and I really always thought I was going to be an artist.
That's really cool. All right, so I feel like your career hasn't been on one single solid trajectory. I feel like it's had, certain dips and rises and dips. Agreed?
Definitely.
But I also feel like you were pretty successful pretty early on, right?
I had a really, when I was in graduate school at the Art Institute, God, I just blanked out on her name. Anyway, I started showing in New York and showing with feature very early, so I had a really big early break. And that's helped me a lot. So yeah, I was still in grad school, and I showed in Europe. I showed in Los Angeles. I have my dog on my lap, by the way.
A cutie. Yeah, my dog's in the kennel because I'm not at home. Stop. I lost track here. So, all right. So, how your work was pretty conceptual then?
Yeah. It's funny when I was in. I loved the Imagist and I loved all that stuff. It's one of the reasons I came to Chicago. But I don't know. Once I got here, that work, I don't know, it just happened. I started becoming more interested in minimalism and conceptual art. I got a really big part of my education is I worked for Rona Hoffman Gallery. Started working there, just, art schlep.
While in school?
Well, I was still in school and just started working part-time and then after school. But she showed, this is in, she showed Robert Ryman, Saul LeWitt, Cindy Sherman, so that was a big influence. Her gallery was a big influence. And I got to see all these collections in Chicago and whatever, I just gravitated to more conceptual
When
work.
did she begin? She showed some of your work, right?
There was an early show that she did, her and Feature, Hudson, that is Feature Gallery that's now in New York, did one of those summer shows where they were showing together. They did kind of a group show. And I actually showed with Feature. And then after that, after Feature moved to New York, I started showing. I showed with Rona a couple of times.
All right, so how did you guys, I'm sorry, go ahead.
There's something else I wanted to say about conceptual, is that, I said before that I thought I was more of a commercial artist, or thought that way when I was younger.
Right.
I thought that's what I was going to go into, and this is really funny. I've been thinking about this lately. That I used to watch the show Bewitched, and Darren was he was in advertising, right? And always a subplot of the show. There was always some funny thing with Samantha, but he was always trying to think of a jingle, or it's like Mad Men. He was always trying to think of and I always thought that was really cool, and realized later that that was conceptual art. I mean, it was about coming up with ideas first, and I don't know, even when I was in a more even in undergraduate school, I was a design major and an illustration major for the first couple years. And during that time, I realized, hey, it's not really the person who could draw the best that was the real idea person. It was it was the art director. So in a weird way, I think that was the start of my interest in conceptual art, really.
So you could almost define, I mean, I don't want to get here yet, but you could almost define yourself as an art director today.
Yeah, I don't mind that.
Okay, well, let's
get. I make a lot of stuff too.
I'm here. But let's get. Yeah, but I feel like both though. But let's go backwards again.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, we're aiming to. How did feature? How did Rona? I mean, how did these exhibition opportunities while you were still in school happen?
Good question. Well, I mean, I was in school, and I'm in graduate school. There was a question before about should you get get an MFA, and there was during that time I was making work, and I showed it to Hudson. I showed it to Rona because I was working there, and she knew I was serious. And so it was connections, I guess, and just being in the right place at the right time. But it was that one show that, Hudson looked at a lot of other artists, and but he liked it and she liked it, so it worked.
I don't know if you can reflect back that distance, but I think I can't. I think at the time, that you were in graduate school, I mean, I think you changed the course of conceptual art. I feel like it could have died without you. And with you, I think it's reemerged and has, a different kind of an incarnation and, perhaps more physicality to it.
Yeah, I mean, I say conceptual art, but I think, conceptual artists from the 70s or 60s would hate that, because I also love the object. So, I mean, my work is very, I still feel like I'm conceptually driven. It's the idea first, but I'm very much an object maker. I mean, I love beauty and I love objects. I mean, I think I'm kind of a pop conceptual artist, but I was definitely thinking about being a conceptual, really carrying on conceptual art, but adding something to it. I mean, I was trying to add to that legacy for sure. And part of that was an acknowledgement of the object. I mean, I saw in these collections somebody like a Joseph Kosuth that's just language, but people would still hang it over their couch. So to me, it was sort of, there was something that didn't fit right about saying that conceptual art was not object oriented. To me, I mean, Michelangelo is conceptual art. I mean, to me, good art is always conceptual on some level. So you're right. I mean, I definitely don't separate that from, I like things.
I think also that what you were doing then and still wasn't very common or trendy, and it took some bravery, balls, gumption on your part. I mean, were you aware of that?
Well, it sounds so egotistical, but I mean, I'll
try not to, but don't worry about it. We're all friends.
When I was, I framed these fur pieces, and I thought, man, I just invented this whole thing myself. I remember Hudson showed me a picture of a Haim Steinbach shelf piece, and I thought, wow, this guy is, making work just like me. And I didn't know there was a whole movement of that kind of work. It's funny, I was just in this show at the MCA. It was sort of about the 80s, and the piece that I had in it, and Jeff Koons' Bunny and the Haim Steinbach shelf were all from 1986, all the same year. which I thought was interesting. But I wasn't. I mean, I was aware of those guys, but I was. You know, we were doing our own thing here in Chicago. It wasn't just me. There were a couple other people too, obviously.
I want to spend some time talking about public art. You know, I mean, when you were in graduate school and the next decade after that, public art wasn't necessary. I don't think was something that you were pushing or felt like participated in. You know, part of your definition, right?
No, I mean, you know, it's funny because public art at that time was, maybe still is. Hopefully, sorry, put my dog down. You know, it was kind of hacky, you know, and it still makes me a little nervous sometimes, but it also is, it's this great opportunity, and it, you know, there's a lot of problems being an artist. There's a lot of difficulty in the art world, and the art, there's a lot of politics in it. I mean, I think it must be frustrating for, the most frustrating thing I imagine for younger artists, or not younger, but all artists, is how do you get in? How do you get noticed? And there's something about public art that it's a whole, you know, it's very egalitarian. It's very democratic. You really have to make art for the people. And it's
there's also tends to be a selection process, and it's not always the person who has the biggest reputation. As my, you know, the good idea has a better chance of surviving.
Well, a kind of idea that people get on a certain level. I mean, you know, I love Richard Serra's work, but you know, his kind of attitude is, I mean, I really love his work, but when he makes a public piece, it's kind of like, fuck you, I don't care what any of you think, this is my work. And, you know, I appreciate that, I guess, but I just don't want to work that way. To me, it's, you know, I like the challenge. I mean, it sounds so simple, but trying to make an artwork that everybody, that people sort of understand on a certain level is so simple. But that was a great challenge, and I still like, it's so exciting.
You feel like the mental process for public art versus what some people would call plop art, you know, art that goes in a gallery that you put in place, it is different. The mental process. And
well, I mean, you know, it's just, you go into a gallery and it's immediately, well, even some of the public works. I mean, I make this piece at Governor State Sculpture Park. It's still kind of it's still kind of a museum space. It's an art space. But you put something in downtown Chicago, or I'm working on a piece for Los Angeles. I mean, that's public, you know, and it's judged in a way that's so different than something in a gallery or a museum. I mean, you go into a gallery and a museum, people don't expect to even get it anymore. They immediately go to the wall label to sort of figure out what the heck.
That's true and unfortunate. When was your first public art experience? What happened?
Well, you know, and public art is not. It's nothing that I really went after. The first piece was a piece in Pittsburgh called Pittsburgh, or Magnolias for Pittsburgh, and it was Suzanne Guez, who runs the Renaissance Society, was on the committee, and she, public commissions are all different, but in this one they invited several artists, I think 15 artists, that had to give slides, show their work. I had never done a public piece before, but she saw something in my other works that she thought I might be appropriate. Anyway, out of those 15, 3 people were chosen to then, they gave us a little money, and then we had to develop a real proposal, and then I got that proposal. So that was the first big piece, but it actually took 5 years to get off the ground, mostly because of delays in Pittsburgh. Hello, you still there?
Yeah, you see it? I tried to pull up your piece. Did it succeed?
Cool. So you still hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Great. So
go ahead.
This piece is, I hand sculpted a magnolia tree out of clay and wax and some other things, and then had the whole thing cast in bronze twice, including, there's about 900 flowers on each tree, and it's in a little grove of real magnolia trees, so, you know, for a week or 2 out of the year it matches the real trees.
And, all right, hold on, maybe I can pull up Paul-Klein.
Really fancy.
So it doesn't, I don't know if I want to say it this way, but it doesn't sound like your selection for this process was totally pure. It sounds like it had something to do with existing relationships.
That's true. I also think it has to do with, like I said, even though I wasn't, it has to do with another piece I did, which was a cherry tree, an indoor.
That was a museum piece, right? That was indoors.
Yeah, that the MCA owns, and I think that gave Suzanne the idea that maybe I could do something for outdoors. So I will say that my work got sort of more populist in a way, and that led to this. But no, somebody knew my work for sure.
When was the snow piece that? Where is it?
That's in Chicago. I think it's called, God, I can't remember the name. I think it's called Monument for Chicago. You have more stuff on me than I don't even have half of these pictures.
They're on the internet somewhere.
I know, cool. Snow Pile for Chicago. I actually made that. It actually came out before the Magnolia Trees, but it's sort of the Chicago version of that, this dirty pile of snow. Uh-oh, there goes my dog barking.
It's not very big. Maybe you can see it.
This is I'll describe it. It's an old shop window in Chicago, an old Goldblatt's department store, which is now, it was a mayor's office, now it's a library. But they had, one of those percent for art things. They contacted me. And anybody who's ever been to Chicago or, the Midwest, you get these incredibly nasty, dirty piles of snow that pile up in, around February. So I made my version of it in this window. So it's really, it's kind of like it's related to the Magnolias in a way, in that it's this static piece that has a dynamic relationship to nature. And so it's kind of funny. In the summer, you look at it and it's an omen of what's to come. And in the winter, it just matches what's going on outside.
Was this a commission, or was this a piece you created that was purchased for a public situation?
It was a public, it was one of those percentage for art things. So it was a commission.
Now,
I had to make a proposal and they accepted it,
So you've applied for public art commissions?
I haven't. There are a lot of, I can send it to you later. There's something that comes out of Las Vegas. Have you ever seen that? It kind of has all these, what do they call them? RFQ.
RFPs also.
And they're, open calls for people to apply for all kinds of stuff. And I've never done it because, I have applied for, I've been invited to apply for a few things that I haven't gotten. And, I've just learned along the way what's worth putting effort into and what isn't. You have to know who's on the committee. Because if you go to all this work and
is this what you're thinking of, cafe? I don't know where it comes, if it's in Vegas or not.
What's that?
Are you thinking of cafe, the site I just pulled up? This has listings of lots and tons of commission opportunity.
I have something else, but this is basically it. This is one of those things.
Well, send me that.
I've looked at them, but I've never really applied, honestly, because it's just too big an open call,
You've done pretty well not applying. So, how about the Chicago eyeball? How'd that happen?
Well, there's this group called the Chicago Loop Alliance, and what they do is there's a voluntary tax from businesses on State Street, and they take the money, and usually they use that money to, put decorations up for the holidays, or they have, anyway, they do stuff to bring people down to the loop. That's the idea. But this was the first year, they had the idea, hey, we'll pool the money and we'll give a little more money than usual and we'll give it to one artist, and have them make a major piece. So this is, this year they're doing Jessica Stockholder. So this is the third year, but this was the first year. And
Jessica's talking to us later on. I mean, a few weeks. Jessica's doing a webinar in a few weeks.
Okay, good.
Let's shift gears a bit and talk about money and how you get paid and how you price a public commission, etc. How do you, did you make money the first time you did one?
The trees, I lost about $30,000. And
so tell me why.
Because it's a frigging, because I tried to make a tree. That's really hard. But, it's one of those things, I mean, to be honest with you, I kind of knew I wasn't going to, I didn't want to lose money, but I knew I wasn't going to make a lot of money. And, I mean, it's just scary working on that scale, and I've learned a lot. I mean, this is, the one I'm doing now, I think, is my 5th public, or maybe it's my 6th public commission, and hopefully I'm going to make money on this one. But, I've made a little bit, but it's really, I mean, it's like, it's the same as always making artwork. Sometimes you make money and sometimes you lose money, but I'm doing it on such a huge scale that it's risky.
Describe what you're doing for LA.
What's that?
Describe what you're doing in LA.
Yeah, it's for, you can probably Google it. It's actually for Sony Entertainment, and it's, which is in Culver City, and their headquarters is in the old, MGM Grand Studios, so the old, Deco studios with the, it has the walls around the whole studio and everything. I mean, they still use it. There's a lot of stuff filmed there. But so they had, again, it's a percentage for art, and if people don't know what that means, it means if a building is built, in a city or a municipality, a certain percentage, a half a percentage or something, has to go to art. So they look for an artist to make a piece. Anyway, so like I said, this was the old MGM Grand Studio, so I'm making a rainbow because it's where The Wizard of Oz was filmed. But I'm making a steel rainbow that's going to be 94 feet tall by 188 feet wide. So
Jeez.
It'll be humongous. And
you're doing this all by yourself and nobody's fabricating it, right?
See that drawing? That's about as much as I did. No, I've got this company, Carlson & Co., which actually, they've been in business for like 30 years, and then they went bankrupt a few years ago when the market crashed, and then they opened up again, but much smaller. But this is a company they do all of Ellsworth Kelly stuff, but it's engineers and it's architects, and now there's a landscape architect involved. So I am the director on this one for sure. But I mean, it's way out of my hands, which is good.
We were talking with somebody else earlier. Go ahead.
It should be up. I mean, it's been going on for a couple of years, and it should be up the end of September.
That's cool. So that'll be the next biggest thing in LA after Helter Stone.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be the biggest sculpture, but I don't think it is in LA.
It might be the biggest. It's not going to be the heaviest.
No. Although it's pretty damn heavy. But it's forget it. I lost my thought. Go ahead.
I don't know. That's going to be exciting to see. I look forward to it.
I know what I wanted to say is just that all the buildings in Culver stop at 45 feet. So this thing is going to be, you'll see it. I mean, my idea was that it was almost like a little Hollywood sign, but for Culver,
How tall did you say it was?
94 feet. 94
by 188 or something?
Yeah, it's a half circle,
Yeah. That's beautiful. And I don't get the feeling there's a whole lot of rainbows in LA normally anyway. Do you have assistants?
On occasion, sometimes. I mean, depending on the projects, it's almost like project by project. But I don't know. I'm working like crazy in my studio now, just by myself. So, but I usually, it's project to project, and then depending on the pieces, like the Paul Bunyan and the fire, that was done. I made a clay model, and then there's there's a place that does fiberglass up in Wisconsin. So, I mean, they're not assistants, but they're big fabricators that are helping me, you know. But I don't have a regular assistant. I've had a guy that works, Joe Casson, who's an artist who's worked on and off with me. So not regularly. I wish I could have somebody regularly.
Let's talk about being married to an artist. Can we talk about Judy?
Mm-hmm.
So Tony's wife is Judy Ledgerwood, who is also a highly accomplished, significant, recognized, appreciated artist. Is she in the room?
This is her. She just went out. This is her painting behind me.
She knew I was going to talk about her. Hi, Judy. So at various moments, one of you has been more significant to others for a moment. You know, I mean, it's sort of like, I guess it's fortunate that both of you have really solid careers. But,
yes.
And I'm assuming that there's more joy to having a wife who's accomplished than not. But can we talk about some of the joys and some of the difficulties?
Well, first of all, I have to tell a story, just to go back again, that I met Judy in undergraduate school in Cincinnati. So we've been together a long time. And at the time, I was a graphic design major. Haircut.
Tony, you froze a moment.
I wasn't going to.
I'm sorry. Something froze for a moment. I'd like you to go back to when you said you were a design major.
Oh, I was a design major in school, but Judy was a serious painter. And back then, I mean, this was, you know, pre-postmodern. Everybody's the same. You know, it was, you were a sellout if you were a designer, and you were,
of course,
only serious artists were artists. So I switched majors, so she would take me seriously. So anyway, we have a long career.
So you owe all your success to her.
Absolutely.
Because otherwise you'd just be, you know, probably doing world-famous cartoons.
Maybe.
So how's that? Right. So how do you guys talk about each other's art? Do you advise each other? Do you bounce? Should I do this? Should I not do this?
Constantly. Well, I talk more. You know, she actually makes stuff. I talk and talk and talk. But yeah, we have, our studio is in the back of our house, and she has the upstairs, and I have the downstairs. And yeah, we have had a long. No, it's great. I can't imagine. You know, a lot of people say, "Well, how can you be married to an artist?" And you know, isn't that difficult? And I can't imagine being you know, who else would put up with another artist but an artist? You know, who else could sort of deal with that, you know, just self-involvement, basically. I mean, we've been married a long time now. Now we don't even really, you know, I say something about my work, then she says something about her work. You know, we don't even. It's like tennis. We don't even, you know, we just go back and forth. We don't even have any pretense about it.
Excuse me.
But I love her work, and I think she likes my work. So it's it's great.
Well, you've used her in your artwork. You've made videos that have included Judy.
Mm-hmm.
How many times have you used her in your art?
Just, I made a couple times. The biggest thing is I made a 35mm film loop, which is crazy in 35mm, of just her kind of in the, it's just just an expression of her face basically in the backyard, and it's just a few seconds, but within that time you see kind of this, you see her kind of negotiate, do I want to do this? Or then she kind of gives it up for the camera, and as soon as she does, she sort of gives it back. And anyway, that's my favorite piece. And then I also did a photograph of her, and I also did a video which she was in. So it was more about my life. But there's been a little period of my work where I've done so much different kinds of work. As you know,
well, that's something I want to ask about too. I have two questions. I don't know. Let's do the first one because it's probably not a long answer. Was it difficult to ask Judy to participate, to do a film? Did she say yes immediately, or did she say, "Let me sleep on it for 2 years"?
No, she wasn't sure about it. I went through this period where I just did a body of work that was very much the art world was going really global, and I think I went the other direction and just focused on my family and my backyard. That's where the cherry tree came from. And I did stuff about my son and my wife and basically, I'm always asking, like, what is art for? I mean, for myself and for other people. And I think I was going through this point of just trying to make art about what I love and what was intimate. At the same time, those works are kind of beautiful too. I mean, I made that film in 35 millimeter because I don't want to bore people either with my story. I'm still trying to, I'm still trying to communicate. So she thought about it, but I mean, to me, that's part of what's interesting about it is I knew, like, ugh, it's disgusting to kind of. I mean, I was doing the Picasso thing. I'm doing my muse, right? I'm making so I love to take on those kind of things, which are cliches in a way, and see.
Was she happy with how she looked in the film?
What?
Amy, my wife, whenever I take pictures of her and think they're gorgeous or arty or something like that, she says, delete it.
Oh. Well, you and I are married to very beautiful women, so I mean, it's totally. I mean, maybe it's. It's interesting because I didn't want to be sexist, but I am objectifying this woman. But hopefully I'm objectifying her in a different way than Jeff Koons or, David Sally. I mean,
Yep.
That was kind of the idea. So she knew what she was getting into. But I have to, I have to do it very carefully.
Of course. Let's shift gears again. Let's talk about how your artwork has changed over the years. I mean, a lot of painters, strike a groove and stick with it. And I advise artists frequently that they should be, brandable sort of, and that somebody should look at a work of art and know, well, that's Tony's, because it looks whatever. But I feel like with you that isn't as easily done.
Well, that's either going to be my great mistake or my great insight, because I'm really, from very early on, again, what I thought maybe failed about earlier conceptual art or even modernism was that, art is about ideas and it's about confronting something and being challenged. But once something's a brand, you're not being challenged, you're just reifying what you already know. And I've been very, very specifically trying not to brand, to be a brand. I try to be. And to me, that was I thought that was what the cool thing about postmodernism was about. Like, I could wake up and say, hey, I want to be an abstract painter, or hey, I want to be and to be honest with you, I really love art. I fall in love with something, like I did this really busy kind of assemblage sculpture recently, and I just think, like, hey, on hip and nobody's talking about. You still hear me? So I say, well, I want to do that. So it's a kind of a greedy desire to kind of do everything. I'm not sure it's good business advice. I do think it's difficult. I think it has been difficult in some way. I'm not complaining about my career, but the jury is out whether that's a good strategy or not, but it's enjoyable working that way.
Why don't you guys start raising hands if you have questions? I got another question for Tony, but then I'd like to go to you guys, okay? So start thinking about questions. You've been teaching a long time. Do you love it?
Do I love it? I like it a lot.
Okay.
It's a good it's funny because I've been on sabbatical this last semester, and it's pretty nice to be able to focus on my work this much. At the same time, it's great to be around younger artists, and that kind of. Again, the great thing about teaching is that you're looking at work, and it isn't branded yet. It doesn't. Nobody is, and we have arguments. We have students that, I say, hey, this is fantastic, and then another faculty member says, oh, this is awful, and that's kind of, I enjoy that, and I enjoy being around the students, but there's only so much time, and I do have fantasies of if I could just work on my art full time. I don't think I'd ever completely give up teaching, but it takes time. It's my day job.
When the day Madeline Grinstein was announced as the new director of the MCA, there was an art fair in Chicago, and she and I walked around the fair together for like an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And she was more effusive about your pieces than anything else she saw. And she said, you know, what makes Tony so wonderful is the number of other artists he's influenced. Look how significant he is, because he's changed or modified the course of art history. And you know, I frequently feel that what determines a successful artist is how many other artists they've influenced. How, you know, where are you influencing these artists by being a teacher, or by being an artist, or by being both? Or I got more to say. Go ahead.
You know, I don't think about. I don't know. I don't have a very good answer for that. I mean, obviously.
All right. The second part is there a synergy between how you teach and the art you make?
Say again?
Is there a synergy between what you teach and the art you make?
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. I mean, yeah, definitely. I mean, the
okay.
thing is, I'm also, and I don't know. I don't have a very good answer. I don't think they're about influencing people. You know?
No, but I think it'd be hard to.
I mean,
but
I guess
it's a nice compliment.
It's a great compliment. Very nice.
Okay, you guys, who has a question? Raise your hand. Let's ask some questions. If you don't pop your hands up, I'm going to call on somebody. Who has a question? Can you hear me? I see that Tony's spinning. I've got some dead air here.
I see everybody's spinning on mine. No,
yeah.
Now they're good.
Okay, so I don't know if you guys heard me or not. I'm asking for questions from out here. I'm going to call on Sarah Jo if nobody else raises their hand. All right, I can't believe you guys. We need an icebreaker. Sarah Jo, it's you. Go ahead.
Okay, it's funny. I didn't realize, or I didn't know that your wife was Judy Ledgerwood, whose work I do know and I really enjoy very much, and that's interesting.
A little louder, Sarah Jo, okay? Thanks.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah.
Okay, what I was saying is I didn't know that your wife was Judy Ledgerwood, and I really have enjoyed, you know, looking at her work and learning more about her work over the years. So let's see, what's my question? Well, since I didn't have one, I'll think of Paul Bunyan. Where is that, and what was it made of? And, you know, how much research do you do into fabricators? Do you work with the same fabricators? Do you try different fabricators? How does that work?
God, I hear my dog barking in the background. I hope he's not too annoying. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you okay.
Research is, I mean, that's the fun part, you know. I mean, I do a lot of research, but at the same time, I hire a lot of experts. You know, I don't really know how to, you know, I always said I never wanted a table saw, because then I think I would feel obliged to just, you know, use the table saw. So in some ways, I have a tiny little studio that you know, that I clean up and I start at ground zero. I mean, it sort of goes back to a white cube with almost every piece. And yeah, the fun thing is now you just get on the internet. I mean, I research, but it's more visual than like technical. So, for example, I made this. You know, I had this idea. I wanted to make a Paul Bunyan. And I mean, in, you know, an hour you'll find 50 Paul Bunyans across the country, so, or less than that. So I do a lot of research, but a lot of it's sort of visual research, or you know, thinking or reading, but it's not so technical necessarily. Sometimes.
I have another question that I'm sorry. Were you?
It's okay. Just louder.
Okay, I had another question about. For example, something that really intrigues me in fabrication are some artists who are actually using people, and I don't think I call them fabricators, although they fabricate, they make things, but in a sense what they're making, if people don't support it, it might be a lost art. And so I'm kind of interested in this idea of a sort of cross-cultural fabrication, you know, a piece. And I think what I was going to ask you is, okay, do you ever get an idea for doing something, and you're really passionate about it, and you want to research it, but then that means you're going to have to fund it or find funding? And I know there's these Kickstarter and various ways to do that, but I just wonder if you've worked that way, where you had the idea and the thing first, and then you found the public space or you lined up the people to help pay for it, or just elected to pay for it yourself. I'm curious about that.
I mean, my dealer that I'm working with now has helped me fabricate some things, Kavi Gupta, who's been fantastic at that. Yeah. But I've really tried to not, I mean, I know artists who've really depended on their galleries to help, or museums or whatever, to help fabricate stuff. And I've never really worked that way. I mean, I try to, I always wanted to, make stuff and sell it and make more stuff from the profits. So I've never really, I mean, I've won a couple of grants, but I'm not a big grant writer. I mean, these public commissions are different because they're commissioning me to make something, but no, mostly it's me. It's not going after stuff. You know what? This is really weird, but I'm gonna just give my dog a bone so he'll shut up. It'll take 2 seconds. So you guys think of a good question.
Yeah, everybody else can have a good question too. I got a question coming up, but I want to hear from Andrea in a minute, and then I wanted to hear from John because you're making big sculptures. So you guys, I'm going to be calling on you in a moment, okay? And Tony will be back in a sec.
Okay, I'm back.
All righty. Hey, Liz, you're next. Go ahead, Liz.
I know that you had said, like, early on in your career how you got lucky in getting shows and stuff like that while you were still in school. I'm one of those kind of people that always kind of tries to aim high, and it's kind of stressed a lot in this webinar that, you should try to be around people who are better than you are, or somebody that you kind of admire, like the directions that they're already in, or where they've been, or where they're going. And I've been finding it kind of difficult to actually meet up with those kind of people, and it isn't that I haven't tried to contact them. And I was just wondering if, when you were starting out in your career, if that seemed to be kind of a hurdle that you had to go through, and how that, and how did that come about, where you actually found somebody who was either like a mentor to you, or had influence on your career early on to springboard you sort of to where you are today?
Where do you live? Can I ask you where you live, Liz?
I live like 20, 30 minutes outside of Chicago.
Oh, okay.
I'm in Indiana, yeah. Near Gary. Everybody seems to know where that's at.
Near Gary. That's a tough question. To me, I mean, there's certainly been a lot of people that I guess I would consider mentors or influential people to me. I met them through school. I know you said you're self-taught, so that's a kind of a lousy answer. But, I don't think you need a lot. I think you just need a couple of other artists, friends that I think, complete isolation is tough. I mean, I tell students, like undergrads, when they get out, they need a studio, or at least a space that they call their studio, even if it's, a closet or something. And they need a couple of other people around who are kind of doing the same thing. You don't need a lot, but I think you need that. It's weird and I think you need it when you're younger. I think as you get older, it's less necessary, but I think when you're younger, it is important that you have some kind of community around. It's not a very good answer.
It works.
That is a good answer.
It works. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you,
I
Judy.
guess visit Chicago more.
Yeah.
Go visit Kay Rosen. She lives in Gary.
That's right. Andrea, your turn.
I'll say one. I do have one other thing about that. Is that if you can find just a few other people, let's say you don't have a gallery, you find a space, you make your own thing happen somehow. I mean, that's the other thing is, every art movement, if you look at the beginning, even I just saw the Stein collection in New York at the Met. Picasso and Matisse, they weren't selling anything, but they were, they were selling a little bit, but they had a community and they were making their stuff and they were serious about it. So in every, music, art, you've got to start at that point where you have a little community. And I had that too. I wasn't by myself. There was Gene Dunning and Judy Ledgerwood and Hirsch Perlman. And there were a group of us in Chicago that were, buddies and trying to do some conceptual thing, trying to do something different in Chicago.
Now the answer is even better. Andrea, go ahead.
Well, I want to say hello, Tony, and I really appreciate your work and your work in the public realm and the conceptual and the sense of humor that you have.
Thank you.
Really love your work. I work in the public realm for about 5 years. I'm on my 3rd public art commission, and
Good.
I'm wondering if you've dealt with the term, I guess, is designed by committee a little bit, and I would say, do you sort of move one way or another, or have you been able just to stick to your guns and really work on the project that you fully vision, or have you had to make some allowances for other people's input? Sometimes there's utilitarian reasons, safety reasons, and how do you navigate or negotiate that when your design perhaps is being compromised or your artwork's being compromised? Yeah.
Well, it's a negotiate. I mean, it's an ongoing. You have to accept that as part of that's part of the public thing, because when you make public art, there's so many rules and restrictions. Now, some of them, I told you before, there are these open calls, but they're so prescriptive. You have to look ahead of time. There are things that basically tell you exactly what they want. Well, you don't want to do that. So I don't know. It's a constant negotiation, but I'm not afraid of that. I mean, so many artists are, I know you have to have that temperament. I mean, I know so many artists that are like, no, I won't compromise, I won't, and that's silly. I mean, there's these, making these public pieces, I'm getting a lot of money to make this work. People are paying me a lot of money, so it's like an architect. To me, there's no architect that doesn't have to compromise their vision. I don't want to say compromise, it's just negotiating the money, the space, the everything. So I don't have the greatest answer, but I think I don't think there's anything wrong with it. You know what I mean? What I like about the public pieces are, I like talking with people that aren't necessarily artists, that are, I like trying to, tell them my vision and get them on board with it. The only other thing I would say is to have everything as specific as possible and nothing kind of loosey-goosey in the proposals, but you're probably learning that. Have you made any money yet at these? On your third one?
Breaking even, not making.
Maybe on the 4th. Maybe on the 4th. You'll start to make stuff.
Working on it, yeah. So sometimes a little bit, but yeah. I'm not in the whole.
Yeah. But that's part of the that's part of the process,
Thanks on that. Tony, do you think of your audience when you're making art?
Oh yeah.
Thank you.
Andrea, did you have more to ask? I'm sorry if I interrupted. Go ahead.
The second part of the question, and this is something that I sort of move in and out of this with my own work, because I work and I have a gallery practice too.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I feel, I'd say, sort of closer with the work I work in galleries. And I'm wondering if you have, I don't know, sort of emotions towards your public work and your your gallery work is one sort of freer. I feel in the gallery context, I'm freer perhaps to do exactly what I want. And how do you deal? Or maybe it's fine with both sides of your work.
It's a good question. I mean, they're different. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I mean, you're certainly freer with gallery work, but you know, a gallery it's still a commercial enterprise, so it's not exactly completely free. You're still, but I did a piece last year at Avi Gupta's, this hot dog man, and in some ways it was very populist in that anybody could understand it, but it was totally raunchy, disgusting, you know, could never be a public work. And in some ways I think it might have been a response to, or a reaction to doing all the public pieces. But yeah, it's different for sure. But they both come with pros and cons.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is the hot dog man. The colors were much more vibrant than these photos, but you can see that
these are bad. I don't know what. These are photos are really washed out. I'm not sure why.
Yeah, they are. But it is a bit raunchy.
But this is not a piece that would be approved for the
for a public art piece.
for a metro station, or I don't see it in front of a bank.
So I guess that leads okay into my next question. Do you think about your audience when you're making art?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, it's funny, it's one of the questions I ask students is I said, who's your audience? And I'm not an artist that makes work for themselves. I mean, I'm a showboat, and I'm totally making it for an audience, and I want their response. My friend Judith Kirshner said that artists in the 60s and 70s, they would never say they're having a show. They'd say they're having an exhibition. If you said you're having a show, that was, you know, such a despicable thing to say. But I like that idea of showtime. You know, I definitely think of my audience. And also, I mean, you know, I tell students, it's good to describe who your audience is. Maybe it's 10 people who are super intellectual. Maybe it's everybody. But I think it's good to sort of think about who your audience is, for sure.
Much more on the egalitarian end of the everybody end of the scale on it. You know, I think your audience is much broader than most artists.
It is now. I mean, I think when my early work was much more, you know, there's a lot more art, you know, inside art kind of. It was much more art about art back then, and that's still a little bit in some of my work. But I've become, you know, I don't know, as I got older, you know, when I was younger, I think you know, you go to art school, and there's something about the exclusivity of the art project that you like. It's kind of like when you're younger, you listen to really difficult music, and it's cool to make art that your parents don't understand. And then somehow, as I got older, I just realized, people over 30 are not stupid, and, you know, I just wanted to talk to a broader audience. I don't know if that's still, but, you know, I'm really mercurial. I mean, I make something really populist, and maybe the next piece will be, you know, really conceptual and difficult to understand. So,
all right, cool. Thank you, Dana. Your turn. Go ahead, Dana.
Hi, Tony.
Hi.
So you're really well established now, so your answer isn't going to necessarily be a match for us in the webinar. But can you talk about what percentage of your studio efforts go to socializing, staying connected, putting yourself in the right place?
Say it again. What part of my...
What percentage, how much effort, what percentage of your studio endeavors are socializing, connecting?
Oh, you know, I have friends who are in the art world and perhaps powerful by some, but I'm not very good at it. You know, I'm on Facebook, but I never look at it at all. So I'm terrible at that. I'm terrible. Actually, I saw that guy. I saw that Alan. I get Facebook things from, but I never look at them. I'm sorry. So I actually want to get off of it, but I don't know how. I just feel so guilty because I keep getting messages and I never. No, I mean, I'm not. I try to be. I don't want to be a hermit, but I don't really. That's a tough question. The social. It kind of bugs me when people. Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. You have to get out there. You have to look. You have to be friends with other artists. I mean, no doubt about that. But at the same time, some people think, oh, it's all social. Some artists are cynical and they're like, oh, well, that person's making it because they know so and so. And I mean, I don't think that's true either. I work pretty hard on my art. So, I mean, it's funny because Judy and I still think about like, oh, we should do this, we should go to that show, and but we do and we don't. I mean, that's just life, I mean, that's the struggle to work, to keep your house up. We have a son, so the social is part of it, but, we go if we're invited.
All right, thank you.
Cool. John, did you have a question? Let me unmute you. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I'm going off on a little different tangent.
No worries.
You've done a fair amount of large pieces, and I'm assuming that you're subcontracting out with different fabricators, obviously foundry for the bronze work. Can you talk a little bit about who you've used and who you like?
Well, different people for different things. I mean, there's a place in New York called Polish-Talix, which is does the casting, bronze casting.
How do you spell that? Pollichtal, maybe 2 L's IX?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, they've been around for a long time, and they did the Magnolia Trees, and I've done some other things with them. So they're the real hardcore kind of art casting place. But the place that I did the Paul Bunyan and the eyeball and the hot dog man and that mood sculpture is this place in Sparta, Wisconsin called Fast Corp. And they're really not art fabricators at all. They make like giant, dinosaurs and big fiberglass, big boy signs and cows. And so they're really like roadside attraction sort of fiberglass people. And they're a blast to work with because they're, just real salt of the earth Wisconsin. We have to stop when they all go hunting or something, but they're not, but you got to know what you're doing. I mean, they're a little cruder, a little rougher, but they'll also work like hell. And then, like I said, this place out in California is Carlson Limited, but those places I've worked with. But it's all different. It depends on the money, and
yeah.
I mean, I like this fiberglass place just because I like the genre of roadside attraction. It seems a funny place to work. So they've been really fun to work with, and they're only 4 hours away.
Do you have to go to these places often?
Yeah, I think I might go up next week. Actually, I'm working on something. So yeah, but that's fun too. I mean, that's all part of my. I never wanted to be an artist. I mean, the idea of just being. I mean, I love my studio, but it's. I enjoy that social part of it. I enjoy working with these other people that aren't necessarily artists, or they're sort of craftspeople, like the other woman was asking about. And that's, I like that social aspect of it. It just makes the art more, I don't know, more fun for me, process-wise.
Yeah.
Cool. Anybody else have a question? John, are you done? Go ahead, John.
Just 2 follow-up comments. One, earlier Cheryl was talking about in China, an artist would have 30 people working for them. And I think in America we have to use a different model, which is partnering with different firms, especially if we're doing large pieces. And that becomes how we collaborate in the production aspect of making our work. So I'm I really resonate with what you're saying. The other thing I just want to say is I appreciate your comment. I also really respect Richard Serra's work, but he has a little different attitude about making his work, and it sounds to me like one of the things you're sensitive to is, you know, the public where you're placing your work, respecting the fact that it's not, you know, an individual. It's a broad base of people who are going to see it, and also generationally, it's going to be there for many, 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 many years. So it's trying to be sensitive to many audiences, and I think that's a really tough challenge.
It's tough. I mean, I'm paranoid that that's, you know, I'm paranoid that the art world won't, you know, that then it's not art or something. But yeah, you know, like the eyeball that I did in Chicago. I mean, that piece was so fun and so big that, you know, even if it didn't work as art, it would work as a kind of spectacle for the audience, and it really did. I mean, that was just a blast to see that. I mean, I really feel like I went through the looking glass. Jesus, now somebody's at my door. I really felt like I kind of went through something and was, you know, into this really populous world, which was fun. I mean, it was fun to just kind of step into that. But yeah, I mean, you know, why talk down to people? Why put something out there that people don't have any? And it's not like that was an easy piece. I mean, some people hated that eyeball, but it wasn't passive. It wasn't just decoration.
Well, that's pretty awesome.
Hang on 2 seconds. Don't leave.
All right. Hey, you guys, we don't have a lot of time left, so I think we have time for Sarah, Joe, and Mark. Does anybody else have their hands up? John, we got. All right, so we'll do that. Let's go with Sarah Jo first. Sarah Jo, keep it brief, okay?
You called on me when I wasn't ready. Okay, I'll try.
Sorry.
Yeah, part of your community, I know. Sarah Jo, take it away.
Friends.
Oh, go ahead.
So I just, Tony, I just wanted to, well, quickly just to thank you so much for, I really enjoyed your comments and your sense of humor and your sort of sense of humility somehow. And my thought about the works and your fabricators, especially when you're mentioning the Wisconsin, is that I love this idea that, you know, in the future, I mean, you sort of mentioned that your paranoia is that people won't see that. But I'm thinking in the future, people looking at the road signs and the Bob Big Boys and something, and then they're seeing some of these pieces. It's like, what was all of this? And so actually, I kind of love that that's all could be a mixture. And so anyway, just to say thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. One more question. Mark, your turn.
Okay, just a quick question. I was wondering if you work on any small tabletop type pieces, household pieces, or is everything you do large scale public commissions?
No. I make smaller things too. I'm making smaller pieces now. So no, I try to make small things too.
I can remember a piece the size of a pie and a piece the size of a styrofoam cup.
I have this cross made out of Diet Coke cans. I have, you know, I have smaller things.
Do a lot of your larger pieces start small and then get big?
I just think I fell into a couple of big, you know, I think that's just these commissions that I, you know, getting back to sort of, I don't really like to give advice to like when people, students or whatever, ask me things, but it's, you know, my only advice is to try to make art that can't be ignored. So one real dumb way to do it is to make it really big. So, I mean, those big public, I just think I was influenced by both the kind of roadside attraction thing that I was talking about, you know. I mean, this Fast Corp, I think their masterpiece is they made a 100-foot muskie fish that's up somewhere in Wisconsin. But I've also been to I've been to Spiral Jetty, and I've been to Dia, where the big Walter D. Marias, and I've been out to Marfa, and that kind of big, which I think is really American, that kind of scale just really influenced a few of these pieces. But I'm trying to make some smaller pieces now. It's harder to make a small piece as a
I think we should wrap this up, but I think the unfortunate thing I've concluded after this discussion is that you make a lot of sense. I've taught my children sort of like, know the rules and then do what you want. And, I think to an extent, in the art world, it's sort of like there are sort of rules, but you can succeed just as easily by not following them as by following them, but then again, I think you've sort of done both. I think a lot of ways you've gone off and created your own new branch of the Magnolia Tree, and some things you followed. And I think, making work that can't be ignored, I say make work that's distinctive, but I think I might shift. I might just take yours instead. But make it yours and go with it. And I think you've really followed, your art comes from your heart, and you modulate that with an awareness of who your audience is and what you can do with and to them. I think it's pretty exciting. And I think one of the other things that makes you remarkable is that you haven't entered the stage of greatest hits yet. Where, so many artists get to be 50 or so and start doing a reprise and, and doing things again. And
I'm waiting for just the right. I have some old fur up in the attic. I'm waiting for just the right.
I want one of those. I could use what was it? Domestic abstraction.
Right.
And Michael Darling was talking about looking for artists that are working outside their comfort zone. And I think it's a real tribute and a credit to you that you keep pushing yourself and pushing new territory, and keeping yourself engaged and keeping yourself challenged. I guess by extension, young. And handsome, and, that all happens participating with younger artists as well. I don't know. I think you've got a really good thing going, and I think it's really been good. I think it's good for you, but I think it's good for your audience also. I also think, we talked, I feel like I'm dropping names, with Jerry Saltz, and asked him who art was for, and he said, art isn't for everyone, but it could be for anyone. And, I feel like part of the reason, a lot of the reason I do this course is so that artists can be more respected and artists play a bigger role in our society. And I feel like you are, I don't know, you're consciously sharing a similar goal, but I think you're bringing more and more people into the art arena and providing them with art experiences, so that, benign people who encounter the Magnolia trees in 2 different seasons end up going, what the fuck? And I think that's a really fabulous thing. And people who see the eyeball, can look at it as spectacle, but then realize further that it is art and it is making a comment and that there is a discussion to be had. So I think you're doing a great job of augmenting our society and, making us all better for it. If you want me to write the introduction to your catalog resume, I'm available.
And I'm really depressed. I'm going to listen to this.
Yeah, just call me up, right? But don't worry, I want the opportunity to reciprocate.
Hey,
all right.
It's an ongoing process. It's like, I don't think one show is going to make you, and nor is one show going to break you. I've been doing this a long time, and it's still hard. It's still a struggle. I still feel, I could, complain just as much as anybody else and not feel but you asked Cheryl what made her the happiest, I think, or
right.
Was she happiest? And this sounds a little Pollyannish, but I really am happiest when I'm coming up with the idea, when I'm making the work. In some ways, I don't want to say everything else is a disappointment, but in some ways I still get a big, it is about that, hey man, I'm lucky as hell. I have this, I'm a full professor. In some ways, I don't have a lot of risk. The biggest fear to me would be to be a bitter old professor that stops making art, or, and I've known a few of those. And so I don't know. I'm just trying to really enjoy the process, and if it works, it works. But it's not like it's gotten any easier, you know. I mean, it's
That's because you keep creating new challenges.
Totally. It's hard. You know.
Awesome, man. Well, carry on. Keep going. Thank you very, very much. I've unmuted everybody. You can all say thank you to Tony if you wish. Tony, thanks a ton.
Tony.
Thank you, everybody. Good luck.
All righty.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good night, everyone. See you soon.
Thanks so much.
Good night.